Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Bar podcast. I am your host, Denisa Tova. And today I have the pleasure of hosting someone truly extraordinary, Judge Harold Beeler. He is now retired and focused on private mediation. Judge Beeler is an icon of legal excellence with a career that literally spans from public service roles at the Legal Aid Society to being a renowned justice. He truly is an embodiment of versatility and experience in the legal world. And guess what? Now he's applying all of that in his mediation practice, which allows him to bring this sort of a balanced and thoughtful approach to resolving disputes. Judge Beeler, thank you and welcome to the show.
Thank you for inviting me.
So, Judge, you have quite an intriguing journey toward becoming a judge. Could you share with us your path to the bench?
Well, anybody's path to the bench is different from other people's, and it usually is a combination of luck and preparation and good fortune, being in the right place at the right time. And with me, I began, as you said, at Legal Aid, and I was always one of those people who, being born at a time where public service was regarded as critical, I never wanted to. After graduating law school, I never really wanted to go into the corporate world. So I went into the world of legal aid and public service. Um, and I found that in many ways my aptitude was more suited for uh, sort of resolving things. It was sort of ironic at the beginning of my time at legal aid. In the very beginning, we had a training program where everybody played different roles, and one of my roles was being that of a judge. And I really remember that one of the participants at Legal Aid who was in the program said, you're really good at this. So, you really are judging this correctly, So I was sort of like, yeah, but you never really know. But then what happened was there was an availability of working for a particular judge it was in the Bronx, who was an excellent judge, highly respected. And I was able to, begin working with him, but even then, I never really thought I would ever become a judge. It just, you don't plan that. At least I never did. Maybe some do. I didn't. But I worked for him for quite a long time, and then I realized that maybe this is an option that's viable for me. And without going through all the ordeals of it all, I became more involved politically, and then I uh, went through different screening panels, which I always was approved. And then the year that I became a judge, it was sort of like this very sort of very unusual situation. Um, in the New York politics at the time, when you were running for a civil court, which is what I ran for, um, you had to go through the screening panel, and then there were only a certain number of seats available, and there was a certain number of candidates, which were greater than the number of seats. And the process ended at a point where I didn't have enough political support to be nominated that year for one of those positions, or at least to run for one of those positions. And then a fluke occurred. I was away with my wife after this whole process was over. It was a relief that it ended. And then we were away, and I got a phone call when I came home, and it was around 1 in the morning, from one of my supporters, and said that one of the judges who was currently sitting on the bench had suddenly died, and that
Mm.
now, because of that, there was an empty seat that was available for that year. And the recommendation that I received was that I should put my name in for that particular seat. And remember, I had just
Wow.
basically lost, if you want to put that in quotes. And so
Yeah.
I was out of the running, but then I was advised to run for that seat because everybody else who was so deep in the process couldn't really change their role at that point. So they remained where they were, and then I ended up running unopposed and became a judge. In retrospect, I don't know if I ever would have become a judge uh, had it not been for
That was my question.
I really, you never really know because I was involved in it
Yeah.
every year, but just for 2 years. Some people, were involved much longer. So I was still a novice in the game, and it just turned out, through, that opening of becoming available that I was able to become a judge.
Just like that. Wow. I'm just trying to feel, sort of almost like visualize and feel through what you're describing is, eh, this sort of it almost sounds like a very intense focus, so much involved. You probably put so many things aside. You have that goal in mind as you were running for the judgeship, and then the news, receiving the news. Okay, well, I didn't get it, so to speak. So you almost like you mentally set it aside to focus on the next thing in life, and then you get a phone call. it's I'm just it,
Yeah, I
it
mean, it was
sounds so
just one of
simple.
the.
I'm,
I mean,
I'm sure it wasn't.
it's supposedly legendary in New York local politics what happened, in the sense that it never
Yeah,
really thank goodness people shouldn't be dying, but it was just one of those,
right.
opportunities that was available. So, yeah. In
Yeah,
fact, as I say, I
yeah.
was
It was
away
my.
on vacation, relaxing after, and then all of a sudden I had to really, really totally gear up. And, I have a very close family, and uh, basically, my sister and my brother-in-law sort of organized, my campaign, which was just getting signatures to be on the ballot. So it was just a, sort of a family affair, so to speak. And I was just lucky, but it's luck after a lot of hard work to get to that point. It wasn't just simply, this opening occurred, and therefore,
Right.
I was able to take it. I still, had to do a lot to get to that point.
Wow. So fast forward then, I understand you took an early retirement and made a significant transition to from the bench to private practice. Could you share what motivated you to make that decision, and any challenges that you may have faced?
Well, the challenge of becoming a judge, I just recited, and that was combination of hard work and luck to that extent. What happened in my early retirement was in the early 2000s, and then going on to when I did retire, which was at the end of 2009. Um, there had not been a judicial pay raise for 10 years at
Mm,
that point. The reason for that, it was political. The Without getting into great detail, the legislature wanted to give itself a pay raise and tied it into the judges' raises, and the governor was opposed to the legislature. So the judges never got anything, at least at that time. And at the same time that that was going on, my children were getting older and they were in college, and I needed to be able to uh, provide for them. And so I was it was a real dilemma for me. I love my work as a judge. I was passionate about it. I felt very strongly that I was doing, a very good job as a judge. But on the other hand, I felt like I really couldn't continue, in this role uh, because
mm,
of the financial pressures and wanting to provide for my family. So basically, I, took the risk of leaving the bench early. And, a lot of judges, felt like I did, like, why we have not been, afforded a pay raise when we worked this hard for so many years. But I don't
mm,
think they necessarily felt, the financial pressure that I felt. I wanted to make sure my kids got a good college ed. So I took a chance, and I decided, after speaking to a lot of different people and some friends, and I decided to leave and start my own practice. And besides it being a real economic risk, it was just a real emotional risk because
mm,
when you're a judge, or even when you was at legal aid, or there's a structure to to things. And you have the support of the staff. You have just basically not being taken care of, obviously, but you're at least being uh, provided and assisted. And when you go on your own, you have to do that for yourself. Now, my family was
Mm.
great, just like my sister and brother-in-law
Yeah.
helped with my campaign. My son, my older son, designed a website for me. My wife helped with some of the computing, and there were some people on the bar. Ironically, one of the lawyers who was working in practice by himself. His name was Woody Greenhouse. He died suddenly a number of years ago, and
Mm.
Woody was uh, very helpful to me in helping me find a place, an office and getting myself set up. And the irony with Woody was that Woody represented an extremely difficult divorce litigant, perhaps one of the most challenging cases I ever had. And
Wow.
he was a great advocate. I loved, and he was so decent to me to helping me out. So basically, I made the transition. I don't. I'm looking at it. I don't want to say I don't. I never regretted it at all, because it really provided me the opportunity to provide for my family in the way that I wanted to. I never regretted it. The only thing I could say is that I was really sorry that I had to leave the bench, in the sense
Mm.
of, it was, to me, it
Yeah.
was a really good fit. And I enjoyed the work. I felt I was effective at it. And I felt that it was a loss for me. But on the other hand, it was more of a gain than a loss, because I was able to do what I set out to do.
It's amazing. It's not easy. It's not easy to make that transition, but you took responsibility. You put your family first, so to speak.
I did.
And
Yeah.
that's yeah, yeah. That is
It,
courageous.
it wasn't, Denise, it wasn't easy, because I have to
Mm,
say that, as I said before, there were a lot of people who felt upset, like I did,
mm,
about not being afforded what we considered to be pay commensurate to what we do, and
yeah,
but didn't leave, and didn't take, and I'm not blaming them at all, because their financial circumstances could have been different, or they just chose that this is a better option
right.
for me. So
Yeah.
everyone makes their own decision. But the irony, not the irony, but the reality is that very few judges did what I did. There were some, and many sort of felt like, it's bad, but we'll stay. And so that was just my own decision, and it was really, done for the benefit of my family.
Mm. How is it being a mediator, working with couples? How is that different from being a judge
It's
for you?
very different in many ways. It's similar in certain ways and very different in other ways. First of all, when you're a judge, you decide. The case is presented to
Yeah.
you. Yes, you try to settle the case like you do if you're a mediator. Your objective is to settle. But and not if that's not possible, then you have a trial, obviously. But when you're mediating a case, you don't have that ability to kind of, I'm putting this in quotes, force a settlement, in the sense that the litigants are not in the in a court. If you want to settle the case, the option is that you'll have a trial, the next day or very soon thereafter. When you're mediating a case, you don't have that power over the people. So it's more a question of being able to persuade people to, and that's really challenging when you're dealing
Mhm.
in mediation, especially when you're dealing with mediation with people who are not represented by attorneys in the mediation. I do a lot of mediations where lawyers are present, but when just dealing with the spouses alone, which is often the beginning part, it's really challenging, because frequently what will happen is that spouses will come in, and it's usually to mediation. It's usually often initiated by one of the spouses, who will say, let's I want to meet, we're going to mediate this case. And then the other spouse sort of looks at you and says, like, why are we here? Why are we doing this mediation? Uh,
Right.
we just
Yeah.
finished couples counseling. The couples counselor said, this or that. And so you're having a disconnect, and and you really have to respect it. And something I learned from my family too is that I really have to listen very carefully, and especially for my younger son, who is a psychologist, and my wife is a therapist. So I sort of have this background where I'm encouraged to listen rather than react. And so it's a real challenge sometimes, but you're faced with people who are different at different stages of life. In fact, one of the mediations I did, uh, even after everything was sort of settled, one of the litigants was so kind of wounded,
Mm,
said, why why did this happen? Why
mm,
couldn't we stay
yeah.
together? So, it's if you're, and at the on the I just want to say one other thing. Even though I focus on listening and trying to hear what the different people are saying to me, they're looking to me also to be more involved than maybe many other mediators, because sometimes they choose me because I
Mm,
was a judge. So it's a very
yes.
careful balance that has to occur. They want guidance, but on the other hand, you can't be too directive, because if you're too
Yeah.
directive, you basically, replace yourself with what their needs are and what they want. So on the other hand, they're coming in differently than if you're dealing only with attorneys, because when you're dealing with attorneys, they're very well equipped to know what's going on, and who
Yeah.
are able to handle things. Whereas with people who are just starting, they sometimes they'll look on the internet and they'll get a little bit of sense of what divorce means, and sometimes they'll have lawyers sort of who they've consulted with, which I strongly encourage, because I want people to come into the mediation as prepared and as comfortable as possible. And that's a problem sometimes also, because what you'll find is when you have lawyers, the lawyer sometimes will substitute for a certain imbalance in a marital
Mm,
relationship. Um, there might be, which is not uncommon, where one of the spouses is uh, financially much more savvy than the other, has basically put together all the financial aspect of things, and the other spouse is really been relying almost exclusively on the spouse who is more savvy. So what happens is, when someone comes into mediation, I need to make sure as much as possible that they don't feel so financially um, uh, you know uh, unable to handle themselves. So I will encourage them sometimes to, get a lawyer to help them, or a financial advisor or something, because the last thing I want is mediation to be used as a tool by one of the
mm,
spouses to impose his or her will on the other. And that's a real danger in any mediation. So when you have lawyers who are equipped to handle these types of cases, they are, definitely able to sort of, or a financial advisor in the background, they're able to sort of help the spouse. And in the absence of that, I work very hard to try to make sure that in my
mm,
mediations, there's integrity. If there's no
mm,
integrity in mediation,
yes.
aside from the fact that the mediation at some point could be upset in some way, that someone doesn't like it, but it's more than that. It's just a process that requires that everybody be as equally balanced as possible. And if there's a deficiency on one side or the other, you need to either be more active in the mediation as a mediator, in my opinion, and you also need to make sure that the person who doesn't feel as equipped feels able to handle things better.
True master. True master. What do you do when you're not working?
Well, I when I'm not working, I have a very close family. Um, as I said before, well, I did say I have one son is a younger son who's a psychologist, and I have a second son who's married, and we have a grandchild for the first time who's 15 months old. So my wife and I frequently will go over to my older son's house and help take care of our grandson. And as I said before, also, I speak to let me put it this way, I speak to my two sons almost on a daily basis. I have a very good relationship with my wife, and now with a grandson, it makes it all that much better.
What makes you laugh?
I guess what really makes me laugh is my grandson. you know,
That's I
because
love that.
he's I what I find that with him is that in order to make him laugh, I have to act a lot differently than I would if I would had the gavel and was on the bench. I have to take the counter judge approach to things. And I goof around with him a lot, and he laughs a lot. He's a very happy boy, and so it's infectious, and so that
Yes.
that really a great joy, for me, and a new one. So it's a big
Yeah.
plus in my life.
Yeah, it brings a lightness and innocence, I can only imagine. That is funny what you said. How would your wife describe you?
You know, most of the time, I think my wife would describe me as being someone who's very serious most of the time, but who is very devoted to his family. Um, you know, it's just when I left the bench, it was for that purpose. What I'm doing now really is for the family. So I think she'll describe me as a loving husband and father. And now grandfather. Although she's really the grandmother was always there before the grandfather. I've come to see that in the sense, there's I think, my relationship with my grandson is slightly different than hers. I mean, we both love him, but she's I think the more naturally the more maternal of the two, and I'm sort of like, the one that plays with him a lot, and goofs around with him a lot.
I love it. Yeah, that's they bring out just that joy that's there. Judge, it's been just such a pleasure to have you. So finally, so you've had such a long-standing career. What advice would you like to leave for law students who actually are watching and listening?
Well, in terms of becoming a judge, it's not easy. Okay, if that's your career choice, and again, I find, for myself, as I said before, it was never my career choice. It's not like you're gonna make apply for a job at a company or a law firm. It just isn't that. You have to be committed to be a judge. You have to be committed to working hard, and then you have to really understand that not everybody is going to um, make it, and it's nothing to
Mm.
do, often nothing to do with abilities. I mean, it's just one of those things where you may be in the right place at the right time, as I was, or in the wrong place,
Mm.
at the time. And you can't be too hard on yourself. I'm speaking just personally because you just can't predict the way things will unfold.
Lots of wisdom, and it is really important. I've also heard certain practitioners say, if you're looking for a job, this is not it. If you're looking for a career, that is very different. And I have tremendous respect for you, other practitioners, because there's so many layers that are there to what you do, and then you have to sort of hold it all together, and be a spouse and a father and a grandparent. So And I don't think people really realize that. So this is truly amazing. And what an absolute pleasure getting to know the
It was
man
great.
behind the
Thank
title.
you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And to find out more about Judge Harold Beeler, click on his bio link below. And please remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Beyond the Bar Podcast, and follow us on all social media channels. Links are posted below. And until next time, stay curious and inspired.